Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here, and I'm here with a review of Massive Darkness. And spoiler alert, I like this game. I like it a lot. I think this game gets a bad rap for not a lot of reasons. It is a lot of fun, and in this day and age of these huge campaign games, I find it refreshing to have this kind of like one and done, zero to hero game. And I think Massive Darkness is a pretty good one. Unfortunately, it could have been a really great one had CMON stuck to their guns. This is a problem that I see a lot of times happen, is when a creator listens to a large group of fans. And in my opinion, the last people you want to listen to when you are creating something is a large group of fans, because you have to stick to your vision. You have to come up with a vision, come up with a design, and then stick with it and see that through. So when this was in development, CMON just wanted it to be a zero to hero one and done game, but everybody on Kickstarter complained about it not having a campaign, and so they added a campaign, and I think that kind of took away some of their development. The focus of their development was no longer on strictly making a zero to hero one and done game, and things just kind of got diluted, and they ended up releasing the game with a really terrible campaign system in conjunction with a one and done zero to hero game that just maybe wasn't as good as it could have been. However, there are a lot of things that are cool about this game, a lot of things that I like, and just with a few tweaks, I think this could be a really fantastic game. So where this game shines is at the micro level of the characters, both the heroes and the monsters. So the heroes, I think, are really interesting in the way they work out, because you have your dashboard here where you are keeping track of your hero, the heroes that you chose. If you remember in our last video for this game, I chose Miriam and Lil Ned based solely on the looks of their mini. And you're going to have your armor, and you're going to have your weapons, 2 hands worth of weapons. You're going to have your XP, your micro XP used in the campaign mode, so just ignore that, pretend that does not exist, and your health here. So and then you're also going to couple your character with a class. Now I usually use the recommended class, but you don't have to. There are a huge number of classes that come, at least with the Kickstarter version, and these are all little notebooks full of different classes. So there are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It looks like 10 different classes. And each one of those classes has 11 it looks like. Each one of those classes has a number of different skills that you can get while you are venturing. And so in a lot of campaign games, this character sheet here, you would keep for maybe weeks or months on end, slowly building up your character, slowly getting more armor, slowly getting more weapons. But in this game, I was able to get up to level 3 with dozens of different weapons in only 1, 2, 3 tiles in about an hour and 15 minutes playing solo with 2 heroes. So that's a lot of fun to me. And the characters themselves, I think, play differently, and they're a lot of fun. So for Miriam, she's a battle wizard, and so I went with her standard class, and I chose mainly to focus on her sword and spell ability, which lets her re-roll attacks. And then I also gave her some magic, which let her use some of the dice symbols to do certain things, like to help heal and to stun the enemy. So she was pretty cool. She was my she was in the distance, pegging monsters off with freeze rays and healing Lil Ned while he was tanking. And so speaking of Lil Ned here, with him, I gave him some extra health and regeneration, and his charge ability, which I didn't use that much. I shouldn't have picked that. And then I went and used his taunt. Now, I did make a mistake on like about 2 turns. I accidentally leveled up to 4, and this map here only went up to level 3. So I had to like retcon that and kind of go back. But his taunt ability was awesome. So he was always up front, tanking the damage, healing himself, and Miriam was healing him. All the while we were fighting all kinds of monsters and getting all kinds of loot. So I mean, I ended up at the end of the game armed with so Miriam had a staff of defense that she could use. She had a warrior's mage's scepter that she could use. I was switching out with a battle axe, some armor. I was using this wand of healing sometimes. So I had all these different weapons that I had, and I had a plate armor. And then Lil Ned had a weapon where 2-handed weapons could be used in one hand. And so he was able to use some big, strong weapons, and he ended up with only 4 weapons at the end of the game and also using some plate armor. But throughout the course of these 3 tiles and an hour of 20 minutes, I had cycled through like a dozen different items and weapons. I got really lucky on some draws at the beginning of the game where I had lots of health potions. So I was really able to use those to keep my heroes alive for the battle. But I really like the loot system in this game. Because you're constantly getting new things, it really does feel like a Diablo style dungeon crawl where you're almost getting new loot too quickly because you're constantly getting new things. I mean, you might walk in, you might open a door and spawn like 3 treasure chests here, 3 here, and 3 here. So that's like 9 different pieces of loot that you're going to be picking up just in one room. And while that can be a little unwieldy sometimes, I think this game, it really works because it gives that sense of energy that I think this game does well. And then also throughout this game, another area that I think this game really excels at are the monsters, and at the monster level. So these were the roaming monsters that I fought. If you guys remember, I chose these roaming monsters here to use based on their looks. And so I made a little custom deck of just the roaming monsters that I wanted to fight. And anytime you draw a monster card in this game, you also draw with it 1 piece of treasure at the level that you're on. And then if any of the symbols match up with the color, with the dice, then that monster gets to use that piece of treasure. So you might draw this, and so this monster might be armed with this plate armor. And then they would add that to their die pool, and then their dice pool. And after you kill that monster, you get their loot. So not a lot of dungeon crawls have that. A lot of dungeon crawls have games where you get loot after you kill a monster. But in this game, the monsters, if they are able to, they actually get to use the loot that they are carrying. And that's super cool. Like, not a lot of games do that, and I don't know why. So if you drew these dwarf defenders here, and then you would draw, let's say you're at level 2, so you would draw level 2 treasure. Now, unfortunately, these dwarf defenders, they don't have any innate ability in range, so they can't use this javelin. They are just carrying it. So this is like an ancient relic or something that they have found in this dungeon, and they're protecting it. So you want to kill them to get that. But if you were to draw maybe this kite shield here, then they would get to use that and add that bonus to their original innate ability to defend. And then a lot of the monsters have their own powers. So I really do think that the game has a lot to offer when you zoom in on the characters and the monsters. They are fun to fight. They are fun to loot. They can be challenging. The game, you can get overrun with monsters very quickly. I had this situation where I made a really lame tactical mistake. I moved into this tile, and then this tile I triggered level 3, because once you move into a tile that has a different level, the whole game like levels up. So I moved in, I killed the monster, the game went up to level 3, and then suddenly I was having to face a whole bunch of really powerful monsters while I still had a bunch of loot in here. So then I had to run back and loot this room to get the treasure, but it ended up working out because I ended up being able to draw like 6 pieces of level 3 treasure, and then I was able to get my guys leveled up. But at one time I had like 3 or 4 just crazy groups of enemies on the map, with some of these wandering monsters that were pretty powerful. So it was a lot of fun. I barely eked out a victory, and I had a lot of fun doing it. So when you go into a room in this game, as you explore the map and you open doors, you reveal one of these room cards, and then that tells you what is going to be in the room for treasure, for like high quality treasure, or enemies, guards, and that kind of thing. So where the game kind of falls apart and where it really just doesn't work is at the map level. There's just not really anything going on as you are exploring the dungeons. This particular set of tiles, this crystal and lava, these lava tiles, they have a little bit going on where if you are a hero and you end your turn in one of these crystal spaces, you have to roll one of the blue d6 dice here, and if you get like if you get that symbol, you take damage. If you get that symbol, you heal, and if you get that symbol, nothing happens. Pretty boring. The same thing as in these lava tiles, you can get damaged here. And then there are some light and dark spaces, and the weird kind of odd backstory about this game is like the heroes are more powerful in the dark. I don't know. I don't really understand the story at all in this game, and I don't necessarily read it or find it interesting. But when you are in these dark spaces, you get to use your shadow mode skill. So that's about the only thing that's going on these tiles. None of the art really means anything. You're not really searching. You're not doing any kind of you're not interacting with the environment at all, and that's a real bummer. And I really feel like these door cards, they could have added more variety to what happens in a room with some of these cards by introducing some different kinds of encounters in the room. And additionally, there is an event deck in this game, which most CMON dungeon crawls do not have. So I was super excited, thinking that this event deck would add, some different narrative elements to the game, some different things that you could do while you are exploring. And that's just not really the truth. There are absolutely no narrative written text on these event cards at all. They're not even really events. They have a title and then a mechanism, and they either help you heal or they either reveal more monsters, and that's about it. It does add some unpredictability, which is nice. It does allow for monsters to spawn in different places, unlike Zombicide, where the monsters are basically always going to spawn in the rooms and on certain spawn points. So this does add a little bit more variety that Zombicide doesn't have, but this deck here is a huge disappointment. It could have been really cool by adding in some more interesting things to do while you're moving around the map, because the map itself is just they're really boring. These tiles are not interesting. Nothing is going on them. So in that sense, I see the complaints at this game. It just doesn't bring enough to the table when you're dealing with the map. However, everything else with the characters, the monsters, the loot, the way you get loot, the way you level up. One thing you can do is you can, what do they call it? Transmute. You can transmute treasure. So if you get, let's say you had 3 level 3 treasures that you weren't using, you can spend a point of action to transmute these to a level 4. So you can keep your old treasure and then transmute it to better treasure and a chance to get something that you will like more. And then there are also a number of different skills that your characters can have that will do different things, different combat skills and enhancements. So different conditions that you can be inflicted with and inflict on others. And then finally, the rulebook is really good. CMON has always made good rulebooks. Their games are relatively simple, but even their more like complex games like Blood Rage or Godfather or some of those other games, they're more competitive games. The rulebooks are always very well written, well organized, with lots of pictures, lots of examples of pointing out where the things are on the components that they are talking about. Tons of line of sight examples and movement examples. So when you read a rule book from a CMON game, you always know exactly how to play the game. And you know what? That, I think, automatically elevates their games like one step up from a lot of Kickstarter games. So yeah, this is a real quick review for Massive Darkness. I wish there was more to do on the map. I wish the quests were more interesting. That's one more negative thing. The quests are just very much like Zombicide. You're picking up one token to take to another spot on the map, trying to get to the exit. There's not a lot going. Some of them have a little more going on, and I do want to play this through this Quest of Crystal and Lava little campaign. Not for the story or anything, but it looks like this progresses a little with a little more variety than the quests that come in the main rulebook. So yeah, that's just a real quick review for Massive Darkness. If you haven't checked it out, I just dumped my box of monsters on the ground. Yeah, if you haven't checked it out because you've heard a lot of negative things about it, I would suggest getting it if you can get it with some of the Kickstarter stuff, and if you can get it for not a lot of money. I'm pretty sure it's a dead game at this point. I doubt they will ever return to this system. So I imagine in some time you should be able to find the game and some of the extra monsters and stuff for not a lot of money, because this game does not have very many fans. So I imagine people will be selling their copies, and maybe they already are, for good discounts. So I like this game. This game is really fun, in my opinion. And I know that a lot of people don't like it, but what can you do? A lot of people like Gloomhaven, and I don't like Gloomhaven. So, take that for what you will. Sometimes some games speak more to other people than they do other people, or something like that. You know what I'm talking about. But anyways, take it easy, guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.